When people think about Indian wildlife, they think about one animal, the tiger. And honestly, that is understandable. The tiger is iconic, powerful, emotional, almost a mythical creature for people who are keen wildlifers, or even for people who are interested in seeing wildlife. But as someone who's worked as a trip leader between 1989 and 2005, the last 7 of which were in the wildlife space, I genuinely believe that the Indian wildlife is underperforming globally. And that's not because we lack wildlife, it's because we are not telling the full story. We don't have the right storytellers. All that is known about India is the tigers. But India is not just tigers. India is one of the very few countries in the world where you can still experience the Asiatic lions, the sloth bears, the leopards, the Indian bisons or the Gaur, the one-horned rhinoceros, the wild elephants, and of course the tigers. Together, this is India's own version of the Big Seven. And in many ways, it is one of the most underrated wildlife experiences anywhere in the world. As I said earlier, for years, Indian wildlife tourism has largely been marketed through one lens, tiger sightings. And yes, tiger conservation has been one of India's greatest success stories. It has also unfortunately and unintentionally narrowed the conversation. Because wildlife is not just about sightings. Wildlife, for somebody who spent a lot of time in the jungles, is about the ecosystems. It's about behavior, the landscape, the biodiversity, the tracking, the thrill of tracking, the silence of the jungle, and the patience, and most importantly, about understanding the forest. Now, the irony is that India may actually be one of the most diverse, large mammal wildlife destinations on the planet, but internationally, we still position ourselves too narrowly. See, Africa owns the Big Five narrative. India failed to build its own. We've never built our narrative. And I think this is what needs to change. Imagine this for a second. In one country, you can track tigers in central India, Asiatic lions in Gir, the one-horned rhinoceros in eastern India in Kaziranga, the wild elephants in north, south and northeast, the leopards across multiple landscapes, sloth bears in dry deciduous forests, and massive Indian gaur moving silently through the jungle. That is truly extraordinary. And what makes this even more special is the fact that these are not zoo experiences, these are lived experiences in the jungle. These are wild landscapes. These are raw, complex, and completely unpredictable. Because each animal behaves differently, each habitat feels different, and each forest has its own rhythm. Having traveled with hundreds of serious wildlifers, they understood this. They understand this immediately the minute they get there. Let's begin with the tiger, because no matter how experienced you are, the tiger still does something to you emotionally. You know, I recently had a travel partner in India, and she and her sons just saw the tiger in Ranthambore National Park, and you should have seen the excitement with which she shared the pictures with me. So tiger does something to you emotionally. There is also this silence before the sighting. There's this alarm call. You know, you're tracking it. It's kind of a tension you feel in the forest. And India today has some of the finest tiger habitats in the world, from Bandhavgarh to Kanha to Pench to Tadoba to Corbett. Each park is different. It has a completely different personality. The mistake is when people stop there, because once you move beyond the tiger, India becomes even more fascinating. Yes, tiger is our magnet, but there is more to it. For example, the Asiatic lions. Gir is unlike anything else in India. There is something incredibly surreal about seeing Asiatic lions in the wild. The only place on earth where this still exists naturally. And unlike African safaris, trust me, I love African safaris. I've done them in Kenya and Tanzania. Gir often feels more intimate. It's more textured, and above all, it's more connected to the local community. Then there is the one-horned rhinoceros in Kaziranga. And honestly, I personally feel that Kaziranga is one of the greatest wildlife parks in Asia. The density of life that you experience there is extraordinary. There is rhinos, elephants, there's buffalo, there's swamp deer, and there is a whole lot of bird life. In a lot of ways, the landscape feels prehistoric. You don't even feel that you're inside a park. You feel like you've entered an ancient floodplain system. I believe that would be the right word for this. Leopards are a completely different story. They are intelligence personified, and as somebody who has had lots of encounters with leopards, I can tell you they're adaptive, they're invisible, and they test your patience. They test you really. Spotting a leopard in many ways requires you to slow down and truly read the forest. But sometimes you do get lucky. Sometimes you just see them lazing around on a tree or just kind of sitting there chilling, but that's rare. Sloth bears, they're perhaps one of the most misunderstood animals in the Indian forest. They're completely unpredictable, but they're extremely powerful, and I feel they're deeply fascinating. And when you see one walking through a dry forest at dusk or later in the day, it becomes an unforgettable wildlife moment. I remember a client of mine sent me a message after the sighting in Kanha National Park in central India. She said they saw 3 tigers, but 2 sloth bears. So the onus was on the 2 sloth bears that they saw. That's the power of a sloth bear. And then there is the Gaur, the Indian bison. It's India's largest wild bovine. It's massive, it's muscular, and it is dominant. Photographers honestly never do justice to the sheer scale of a mature Gaur bull standing inside a forest. You've got to see it to believe it. And finally, my favorite, the elephants. Elephants change the emotional energy of a forest completely. They're intelligent, they have a deep social structure, and they're extremely calm. Seeing an elephant creates a very different wildlife experience altogether. Now, here is the uncomfortable truth. Seen from my lens, from the lens of a trip leader, from the lens of somebody who's experienced India up close and personal, 1989 till date, I've been going to jungles regularly. I feel that India should have already been one of the world's leading wildlife destinations. We have the biodiversity, we have a conservation success story, we have extraordinary landscapes, we have luxury lodges which are second to none. There is the Taj, there is the Oberois, but then there are a whole lot of other boutique luxury lodges which are absolutely amazing. We have experienced naturalists who are not indifferent to your needs. See, a lot of places I've been to, I've seen the naturalists are very indifferent and they point out things to you in a very matter-of-fact manner. Not in India. You have experienced, involved naturalists, and I personally, and I may be biased here, I believe that we have one of the most unique wildlife combinations possible anywhere. So the question naturally is, why are we underperforming globally? I think the reason is that we are still selling sightings. Instead of selling an experience, instead of selling the ecosystem, we are selling sightings. Serious wildlifers do not chase tiger photograph. Serious wildlifers look for habitat diversity. They look for the behavior. They're there for the thrill of tracking, for bird life. They love to be a part of the conservation story. They love to hear it. They want that emotional connect with the wilderness. We have world-class infrastructure to offer this. We're just not selling the story. The future of Indian wildlife tourism, in my opinion, should not be about counting tiger sightings. It has to become about understanding the incredible diversity that this country has. Because India is not just one forest. India is not just one national park. India has dozens of ecosystems, dozens of wildlife stories, hundreds of experiences, and maybe that is where our real strength is. Not in just one iconic animal, but the sheer depth and diversity of wildlife experiences we offer. The Big Seven of India is not just a tourism idea. It is a different way of looking at the Indian wildlife together. And I genuinely believe the world has only scratched the surface of what India can become as a wildlife destination.